Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha.
All right, good to be with all of you. It's such a joy to have you physically here. Those of you online, always a pleasure. We are actually in the teachings at this current point of the six paramitas, six perfections. It's the path of a bodhisattva. It's kind of nice. It's paralleling the monthly retreat. So in the monthly retreat, we tapped into what we'll be talking about today. Spend a day on that, on generosity. So the six paramitas, the six perfections, are these paths of a bodhisattva, but they are practices that you can engage in your life, whether you're on a Buddhist path, not on a Buddhist path, that radically transform our ability to engage in the world with much less suffering and quite a bit more resiliency and joy. We just said them for those of you who did the refuge prayer: generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. What makes them uniquely bodhisattva path is that we engage in these activities with a much deeper understanding of our interconnection with all other beings and our appreciation for all others and a desire to be a benefit to all beings. And so with that motivation, as we offer generosity, for example, we have good virtuous merit, just being generous. There's a lot of benefit in that. We'll unpack that a bit. But when we recognize that this giving, and may it be helpful to all beings, with this awareness of the ripples of the effects of our generosity and what we can do to benefit others, then there's this magnitude of difference. And there's so much to be available there. So for those of you maybe new, we've been going through a text on discursive or analytical meditations on the stages of the path to enlightenment. So essentially, these would be meditations on the Lam Rim stages of the path that one would do over a period of time and get some realization of. And so tonight we'll be talking about generosity. But if one were to, go spend a month, 2 months, just engaged in going deeply into a meditation on generosity, its benefits, the motivation, the qualities of generosity and how we can improve the world. And you'd get some realization from that. It'd ripen the mind and you'd sit with that. So since we're not living in a monastery and you're probably not going to spend 15 years doing this, though you're open to, the approach that we get to use is once on Wednesdays, we'll unpack, the teaching. And then the idea is that maybe you practice during the week, in this case, being generous in the many ways that we'll talk about during the week, and just start having that be a way of being. Then next week, come back and be on virtue and explore that. So we go through each of these traditional discursive meditations, but the idea of let me bring it into my life. And hopefully you find that helpful. But before we get right into the text, last week recorded a teaching on Tonglen, the practice of taking and giving. And so a lot of people were able to attend that, and there was some discussion afterwards. And Rachel thought that there might be some questions about that practice. So I thought I would make that space available since I wasn't physically here, and see if anyone either online or here maybe had some questions about the practice. If you're online, just invite you on mute because I only see a few of you. And I'll pause while you ponder whether or not you have a question.
Yes, I had a question. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
I was wondering if a recording would be available to put on the Way of Compassion?
For that specific practice?
Correct.
Yeah. So we do have the recording of the teaching, so maybe we can investigate if Rachel or Aaron would break that down into just the focus on that practice. But we can certainly do that. We can post it in our community.
Thank you so much, Rachel and John.
Yeah, Rachel put a thumbs up. Good. And just so those of you who maybe weren't here, didn't have teaching last week, a practice of Tonglen is a practice of literally becoming open to taking on the suffering of others and giving all of your virtue to them. So it's this practice of Tonglen, of taking and giving. So it's this practice. Often it's done, sometimes with someone we know who's suffering and struggling, might be in the hospital, or, family's going through some tragedy. I know there's a recent one here in Denison that I'm aware of, and you think about their suffering and their struggles, and you bring to mind their suffering, and your heart opens, and you want to take that suffering on. And so in this meditation, you would visualize them there, and all their suffering comes out in this dark smoke that comes right into your nose, and on the in-breath, it comes right to your heart center. And this little dark spot of self-centeredness that we tend to all have. It comes and that spot just shatters, that self-centeredness, and all this radiant light of your virtue, of your merit, comes out and is received by them. And with each in-breath, we're taking that on, and each out-breath, giving, and you see them getting better, and you see them receiving these benefits. And so it's a practice, Tonglen, that was detailed last week. And very transformative practice. So yeah, we will edit that video and make sure that that's available for those who are interested. Anybody else? Question? Comment? Buddhist joke? Nothing, huh? All right.
I have a joke.
All right. Saved me.
I have a comment when he's done.
Okay, let's do the joke first.
What did the Buddhist monk want for Christmas? Nothing.
He didn't want to enlighten the tree. See,
Presents.
he wanted presents. He
That's right. He wanted presents.
wanted presents. Those are some good answers. All right, Connie.
I had an opportunity to use that because someone close to me died unexpectedly. And the next morning, actually, after our teaching. And so I was able to do that for his wife and for Dan and my son and daughter-in-law. And I had never done it before, and I didn't know what to expect, but I actually felt as if my heart expanded. I really felt it. So I was so glad that I had that teaching when I did. So thank you.
Thank you. So glad to know you had that opportunity. And as I mentioned the teaching last week, my teacher, Geshe Gelsen, he's on one of those sides there. Yeah. They call him the Tonglen Lama. If he was breathing, he was doing Tonglen. And he would teach like you could, once you get some practice, you can do it in the grocery store. You can do it, and anywhere that you see people struggling, you see somebody, homeless, you can bring that in pretty quickly. It's a wonderful practice. Okay, so let's get into the text. We are entering the six perfections, six paramitas, the path of a bodhisattva. And the first one that one would focus on would be generosity. So in the Lam-Rim, generosity is explained as the virtuous intention to give, as well as physical and verbal acts that are motivated by that intention. When such intentions and actions are motivated by bodhicitta, that's the desire to remove the suffering of all beings, they become the perfection of generosity. So we can engage at many levels with generosity, depending on our motivation. Most people are generous out of kindness and compassion. We donate money to charitable organizations. We give food to the hungry, care for abandoned animals, and so on. Such actions are admirable. But if they're not motivated by bodhicitta, they are ordinary acts of generosity, not the perfection of generosity. When bodhisattvas give, they do so with intention to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. That is the perfection of generosity. And so just a quick distinction here is the idea of just karma in general. Karma, people say you reap what you sow, or you do activities that are virtuous, that are wholesome, and then there's a result, right? Cause, result. And so when we're kind, when we're generous, that's beneficial. You'll benefit, others will benefit. It makes a difference. Nothing Buddhist about that. It just is a way of being, and we can explore that a little bit. And but when we think about karma, often the analogy is like a little water bubble, sitting on a leaf, a little piece of dew. It's a good virtuous action. And then a result will come, and then it'll be gone. So the karma ripens and it goes. But as one is motivated with bodhicitta and this compassion, then this merit, this generosity that we're engaging in is like having that drop of dew into a lake of bodhicitta, a lake or an ocean, where it's not going to evaporate right away. It's going to be sustained with the efforts of all the others who are engaged in such activities. And so we do a dedication at the end of our practices. We're dedicating our merit for the benefit of all beings. We're placing it in this ocean of merit. And one of the visualizations I do personally is, I picture this lake in the top of the Himalayas, and then the water that's imbued with all this virtue, what finds its way into the rivers. It finds its way into the world. It goes into the sky, into snow, into water, rain. And all of us, are mostly water. Right? We're about 75% water. And you sit there and you think about this water. And I visualize that because I'm very into this idea that I have water bowl offerings up here that Sam filled up. That water could have been in our teachers. That water has been in the clouds. It's been in the oceans. It's been in our bodies. And so thinking about this water being imbued with this merit, it lasts. Unlike that little dewdrop that often disappears. So thinking of it in these terms of being motivated, our motivation is the activator for anything that we do. What we do is not as important as why we do it. Why are we doing it? And when we bring this to mind, every activity we have, we can have a wish, a thought, an intention that this be a benefit to all beings. It's actually that talk that brainwashed me a bunch of years ago. I was at a teaching. I was still fairly new to Buddhism. I went to teachings and old Tibetan Lama, and I was kind of getting my feet wet. And we had a group of monks that came. This was in Long Beach, California. And the monk that gave the talk, he was fairly young. And he gave this talk about bodhicitta, about this great compassion, and about the motivation that literally everything you do, you could be having the thought of how this could be helpful. He even talked about going to the bathroom, like the bacteria and man, ripen in the right ways, for beings and whatever, biology needs to take place. And when you're eating, that this food nourishes me so I can nourish others, that, whatever he was doing, that it could have this motivation to be meaningful, beneficial. And the thing that struck me was like he meant it. He meant it. Uh, it just moved me. And, I would get to meet him and talk to him. It was after that talk, I went and I was like, I want to know more about this stuff, man. And I went out and we're never getting into this teaching, by the way. So I went out of that teaching and I went to talk to monks, because there was a group of monks and one of them was, at the booth selling like things, Buddhist things. And he didn't speak much English. I'm trying to talk to him. And he knew how to tell me that mala is going to cost me $10. So he knew that. But I didn't get much more than a mala out of him. And then I went out in the parking lot. There's a Western monk. And I spoke English. I was like, hey, I want to know about this. How can I be like that? And he said, your teacher at this center here in Long Beach, he's one of the greatest masters in this whole lineage. He's this incredible being. He could be, the head of all of this lineage, and he's humble. And he said, go volunteer there. Be around him as much as possible. And so that's what I did. I volunteered. I cleaned bathrooms, and I'd be around there. Then my friend cleaned the bathroom a lot better than I did, so I got bumped off the bathroom duty. Became the water boy. We used to have to go out and fill big jugs of purified water in a water place, so I'd do that. But it engaged me, and I got to be around there. It just moved me. This one teaching, and that would lead me to go into a teaching by His Holiness 14th Dalai Lama, which, long story. I was sitting in the fourth row, just a regular guy, school teacher. I was a school teacher. Fourth row, Dalai Lama's teaching. And again, I was moved. And a thought occurred to me, why not be a monk? Like, there's a bunch of monks and nuns on the stage. He's there. I'm in the fourth row. He's brainwashing me for 3 days. He's like right there. And I knew some of the nuns. I talked to them, and they said, if you're really thinking about it, you meet your teacher. Ask him about it. I don't want to tell the whole story. It'd take a long time, but the short version is, I would get permission to get ordained. I would travel to India to the monastery, and when you get ordained, you enter the monastery, and you are assigned a teacher who's like, he's responsible for you. It's like a family. There's like a teacher, and you got little monks and the other monks, and we eat together, and go to school, and you learn. And the teacher that was assigned to me was the monk who years earlier gave that talk. He's currently the abbot of the monastery. He's quite an amazing being. And so now he's my teacher at the monastery. And I come back to Long Beach, and there's this little monk who needs a place to live. Well, he's the monk who sold me the mala. And he becomes my roommate for the next few years. He comes and lives with me. And then the Western monk who's in the parking lot, who's driving the monks on tour, well, basically they gave me his job. And so I would be running the tours next. They set me up years before without my knowledge. And so things had unfolded in that way. And to bring the story full cycle, what job did they give me when I came back to the monastery? Being one of the coordinators to host His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama when he comes back to teach. So in 2004, I'm in the fourth row, just a regular guy. 2006, 2 years later, I'm running that event and I'm greeting His Holiness, and I'm a Buddhist monk now. And that was a change. So I always tell people when you go see His Holiness, be careful, you might get a haircut, things change. But yeah, to be in that same environment, Pasadena Civic Auditorium. So all that to say, back to how karma ripens and things that happen in our lives, and our motivations. Sometimes, things will ripen at just a particular way. This bodhisattva motivation that one could have in all things, it just transforms how we engage with others. It transforms our own minds. And so the distinction is, yeah, we can be generous and, make a donation to something, or we can go help somebody move, or we can, give someone our attention, generosity of time. And that's all meaningful. But when you amplify it with the understanding of the impacts of our interdependence and how everything we have in our life is because of others, including the words we get to use and any knowledge that we have, everything that we own, anything that we've ever got to experience is because of countless others. There's nothing independent about us. I mean, if you can find something independent, let me know. I've been looking for 30 years, but I haven't found anything independent about me yet. Any word I used was taught to me. My body was given to me. Everything I get to experience, clothes, food, everything, is nothing independent here. And when you realize that you're a part of this experience with all other beings who give life to you, who paid taxes so you can get an education, who put those roads down that we could drive on, you start to realize, wow, all these beings are giving life to me. And how can I be a part of this in a helpful, meaningful way? We're a part of something that we can contribute. And with that understanding, motivation, then our activities become in alignment with the perfection of generosity, as opposed to just being generous because it's a good thing to do. Often we're generous without even thinking about being generous, right? How many times did you give a tip and you just figured out what 20% was? Heck, you don't even have to figure it out anymore. They'll tell you on the receipt, right? You just check the box. What would it be like to think, wow, how wonderful it is that I had this food and these people are so kind, and I'd love for this offering to go to the workers here in ways that could support them and their families and help them with their education and provide for our community and offer a tip with that motivation. It's very different. It's very personal, right? The generosity of time. I mentioned we did generosity at the last monthly retreat. There's a very famous charity I think it's in Taiwan. I believe it's Taiwan. Very famous. Like people contribute millions of dollars. Like they feed the homeless, they do stuff. I mean, they really do good work, and people want to give, and they make a real difference in the world. And there's like heads of state that'll donate. There's people, you know, CEOs and all that want to contribute. And the woman who runs it will not let them donate unless they volunteer their time. Yeah, you can give me $1 million, but not unless you come give me your time. Come here and serve. And then she'll accept the donation. And what a difference, right? What a difference, because now it's personal, right? Now it's personal. Now they've given their most valuable commodity. They could have wrote a check much easier, but they gave their time. It's very successful. And so when we think about this opportunity of generosity, there's this value to our own personal growth. And that is, there's an opportunity to free ourselves from some attachment. So our core root issue in life, when you think about it, is our attachment. I'm pretty important. I'm important. I want to be okay. I want my life to be okay. I want to have certain things. And the idea of generosity is the idea to give just a little more that's a little uncomfortable, letting go of something. And notice our attachment to, because how much of our life, I mean, if you sit there and think about what you have in your life, think about the abundance that we have. I mean, look at generally your clothes in your closet, I don't know about you, but I got this one jacket that's hanging in the front closet. It's furry on the inside. It's kind of Pendleton looking. It's red. It's nice. I like the look of it. I never wear it. I kind of like the idea of it though, but it isn't quite, like a couple times a year I wear it. And why don't I just give that to the thrift store? And you sit there and you think about how many things we have in our lives, how many cups we have in the cupboard, how many things we have in storage, how many things. Now we couldn't live without that, live in a closet that we don't even look at for 3 years. But we're attached, right? How simple life really could be. And the idea then is to give just a little bit more than is comfortable. And now it's not just stuff, right? It's attention. How many times has somebody wanted your attention and you got something to do? And, how about giving some our attention? Our attention and our time is usually often the hardest things to give. Yeah, I was actually at a meeting last night, and yeah, I was trying to get home. My wife was home. We're gonna meet, and this guy starts talking to me, like for 20 minutes, man. And and there's that opportunity to just fully be there for him because he had a lot to share. And when you when you give them your attention, you let someone know you value them. I see you, and I'm hearing you. I mean, imagine if we gave each other our attention in this world. Well, how would that be different? So the opportunity to give our attention, our time, but not just to endure it. Like, come on, I know he's got to stop at 7:30 because there's another meeting. It's like, here's another human being who's sharing something with you. Like, what an honor. What an honor that someone is sharing something with you. That mind, that's a very different mind. And so what happens though is we benefit. Our mind changes. We become less attached. We become more connected. We recognize some of the things that hold us back as we recognize the value of others and our opportunity to be a benefit to others. I'm going to pause there because Kurt or Keith had their hand up for a long time, and I'm afraid it's going to get, stiff or something.
I keep putting it up and putting it down because I'm not sure I want to ask this question because I don't quite know how to frame it. But we're talking about this last week in Tonglen, and one of the reasons that Tonglen appeals, that I do Tonglen, is because when I'm faced with suffering in the world that I can't do anything about, I feel better. It feels like I'm doing something to help that in situations where I can't go fix the problem. But then it came up a little bit that, boy, you got to be careful that you're not doing this for selfish motivations, right? Then you just read that when, generosity is fine, good, regular generosity is just fine. But when you add bodhicitta to it, which is the desire, I have the desire to achieve enlightenment, right? So that I can truly be beneficial. I'm still struggling with this. Okay, what's the selfish motivation here versus how altruistic and how completely selfless do I have to be in this giving? Or, is there a part of it that is also selfish, right? I guess that's my question. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. And the key is to meet ourselves where we're at, To aspire to be a bodhisattva, there's aspirational bodhicitta. But to think I'm already one and can already be completely selfless. Because you know what? You're not getting this cup. Man, Sam gave me this cup. We have these, self-destructive thoughts that I'm going to beat myself up for doing a good thing because I want to do a good thing. Right? You see the cycle there? And it's not completely selfless because I'm desiring being a good person. But we just meet ourselves where we're at. We start with being generous even when I don't even want to be generous. And I do it anyway. And that's very generous, right? And His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama will call these activities being wisely selfish. If you're going to be selfish in a virtuous way. Yeah, you'll benefit from it. You will benefit. As Connie pointed out, when she was doing Tonglen, how her heart expanded. She benefited from that. And what I skipped on this practice is what they always have us do is before you engage in a practice, what are the benefits of doing the practice and what are the disadvantages of not doing it? So what's the benefits of being generous? What would be the disadvantage of not being generous? Like selfish, self-centered, and always comparing, and our miserliness and greediness about our things and their things. And so actually you would, even before you get there, you would see that you would benefit and what the benefit is to the world. And so we can have a virtuous desire to be healthy, to be well, to feel good, to have some benefit, and that we deserve that. It's fine. And maybe one day I can be like Geshe Sangye, that was my teacher. Well, he's the Kempo now. He's the Kempo Sangye, where every moment of my life could have that. I'm not there yet. I'm still very aware I have some ice cream in the freezer at home that I might have a little taste of later. I'd share it with you though. And but how much more capable I am of having that attitude more often, right? Just more often. And what's that saying? Don't let the good be the enemy, or don't let perfection be the enemy of the good, right? You don't want to do it perfect, so I don't do it. We just do it, and we get better at it as we do it more. Alyssa.
Thank you, John. I wanted to go back to what you talked about with giving of your time during the meeting and how you knew that you had a plan with Laura and how you've got two places to be generous, right? And I related to that story so intimately because I find myself in that place pretty regularly where I'm needed and I'm needed by two or more situations or people at the same time and wanting to be available and very much present for both. But how do you how do you make that choice? Because I could see being being present for the person at the meeting and how important that was. But then does Laura, and this is just an example, right? I could say the same thing for me and Jeff, my husband. Um, does that end up hurting the other person? You know, just logistical.
And that's where we really need to be present with wisdom, right? So we gauge uh, what the priority is. And if someone's sharing deeply from their heart and they need a little extra time and you're able to give it, that's fine. And you could be a little late, then that's not a big deal. But it's really attuning to the heart of what's going on and being clear about what's healthy, right? And, for example, similar, today I ran home, quickly to get something. And my neighbor, so technically I had to use the restroom, right? So I'm kind of urgent. And I pull up, and my neighbor across the way is like, "Hey, John, hey, you need something." So I'm like, "Okay." So I turn around, and it's not like he's out in the street. He says he cuss, come out, kind of thing. And finally gets across the street, and then he's asking me some automotive questions. So I used to be an auto mechanic and fix cars. So he's got this thing with his car. So he's asking me these questions. And so I'm like, yeah, fully there and answer his questions. I had some questions about it. Wasn't too rushed and all that. And he's a bit of a talker. And a little bit longer. But he took a breath for a minute. And then I was able to say, yeah, well, that's wonderful. I do have to use the restroom. And oh, okay. And then part ways, right? And so there's that break. So like last night, I was aware. So we were in between two meetings, and the next meeting was going to start at a particular time. So I knew there would be a stopping point. And it was at that stopping point. Oh, it looks like the meeting's going to start. It's good to talk to you. And, let's do this some more. But you may also have an opportunity to just let someone know that I'm, glad we have this opportunity. Can we make some more time? I have another appointment. And, but I do want to come back to this. So, it's really just speaking with your heart. uh, but not being like, I can't wait for them to finish so I can go. Right. That's the difference. They're impeding my thing to go do something else. So if you can bring that to mind, and then just having a good boundary, I think that's a skillful method.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Is it Keith this time?
It is. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Hey, just in response to Richard's question about Tonglen practices recorded and the whole topic here, really dropping self-centered attitudes for compassion and generosity. Venerable Kadro, the author of our text, happens to have a series of 10 meditations that she titles Equalizing Self and Others. And it's a series of meditations on equanimity and dropping self-centered attitudes and whatnot. And the final two are Tonglen meditations. So they're basically laying the framework for Tonglen. And each meditation is a little talk and meditation by her that are about 10 minutes long. I find them wonderful and very helpful and beneficial. And then you finish with the Tonglen meditation. So I wanted just people to be aware of that. We could post it in the chat, or we could, if you wanted it, John, to take a look, we could put it on Way of Compassion.
Why don't you just post it in the community if you can?
Yeah,
Okay.
no problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
just wanted to bring it to folks' attention. Thanks.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, we have a community, online community. It has an app and everything. It's free, totally free. But if you can, if you're interested, just join that, because we post like I wasn't here last week. It was only online, like, little announcements. So it's really helpful. And then other resources get posted.
Just so people are aware, I'm going to post it in the prayers and practices. That's where you would find it on there.
Okay, thank you. All right, Eric.
There's the mute button. Quick thought on why not to worry about whether you gain benefit. Of course, overly intellectualized gobbledygook, but what if that moment of generosity were to be that drop in the ocean of Dharma that did it for everyone for all time? Or just for someone else for a moment. So what if you got a little benefit? It's all contributing. All done.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate that. Yeah, wouldn't that be an interesting thing? Now I'm not going to make the donation because I want to feel good about making a donation. Make the donation, man. It changes lives, right? And yeah, I like that, Eric. What if it's that last little drop that somebody needed and changed everything? So, it's always valuable to do what we can. We benefit from this, and that's one of the key things is around attachment, and is to kind of notice our level of discomfort that arises as we get to a level of comfort. So once we have a certain level of living, it becomes uncomfortable to have less of that, right? And so, if you're homeless and then you got to stay in a motel, that's pretty cool. Then from a hotel, maybe you make it into a mobile home, That's pretty cool. I'm actually telling my life story. I lived in a junkyard trailer park after being homeless, and that was like phenomenal, And, but as we accumulate things, as we get a standard of living, what once was like wonderful would actually be suffering, stepping back down, right? And so we start to notice that mind, uh, I lived as a monk, and if I was at the monastery, you got a room, you got this little flat cot, and I had a big old bee nest outside my door, and had a couple meals a day, and it was great. It was wonderful, and then you think about all the stuff we have, right? And is that stuff really contributing to our lives? Do we own it? Does it own us? And how much suffering if we didn't get that? I'm trying to think. I know what my last craving was. Ever notice how you just look at something, you think, man, that'd be great to get, and you don't really need it. That's my thing. But I was getting some tires, and at Walmart they have an 80-gallon air compressor, man. And I'm like, wow, it wasn't much price-wise. I have a little air compressor. It's noisy. Like every time I hit, I feel like the neighbors are just delighted. And so I'm real cautious. So I have this fantasy of having a silent air compressor. They make them. And this one was 80% more silent. And I'm looking at that and I'm going, wow. But my mind says I don't need an air compressor. I have an air compressor, right? And I don't use it that often. But you can see how the mind just goes to something, right? Like, oh, that would be nice. This would be nice. And how could I be helpful with that money in other ways? Simply as even instead of spending, that was like $230 or something. Even if you spent $50 at a local restaurant with a meal and you contribute to your community and the servers got some money and people got fed, like that's a different thing I could do with it. If I had that money, right? So the idea then is noticing how attachments in our lives actually create a lot of stress, a lot of comparison, a lot of what somebody has that I don't have. And generosity counteracts that, counteracts the primary root cause of our mental and emotional suffering, our attachments, self-centeredness. Generosity is the opposite of that. And so the more that you can engage in generosity, you're literally counteracting the single most cause of our own mental, emotional stress, worry, and fear. I mean, think about people in your retirement funds and, the things you do and just all the things that we stress and worry about as we have heat and clothing and food. Like our needs are met. They're all met. Anybody know how many bicycles you need? Anybody? She's got it. It's however many you have plus one.
Plus one,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. Somebody online was saying plus one. Right. Musicians, how many guitars you need? However many you have plus one. There's just that thing, and we have so much. We don't even notice our abundance. And the desire around that. What if we saw our opportunity to contribute to other people's welfare? And so in this perfection of generosity of time is one of the most important ones, as I've mentioned. It's not about having a bunch of money, but generosity of time. Generosity of resources is helpful, but also generosity of protection is one of the other ones. Helping people be safe. And so sometimes that's helping people have some food, shelter, things of that nature, or someone's emotionally really in distress and you check. In this parking lot, I was taking a walk around the building, doing some prayers, taking a little break, and I noticed a woman out there with a floor jack in her car. You don't see that every day in this parking lot. So I'm walking. I kind of walked past. I thought, I better check. I'm like, hey, you need help? I'm thinking she's changing a tire. No, she's got her whole engine apart, man. And I mean, literally, the valve cover's off, the cam's open. She had taken the time, like it's apart. At first, she goes, "No, I don't really need help. I got this." I'm okay, good. Yeah, she goes, "Do you know anything about cars?" And I go, "Yeah, I used to be a mechanic. Oh, cool. Yeah." And so I'm walking over. She's not changing the tire, man. And but it was nice. I was able to confirm what she was doing. She's pretty handy. She had tools. She was doing it, man. She tore the thing apart and she's lining up the camshaft. She has to get the timing chain on properly and set the marks and stuff. And I was like, and I was able to just confirm with her what she was doing was right and how you set things up on top. So, but just the idea that you notice and like I only had 5 minutes, right? But I had to go back and ask, and at least she felt comfortable. But yeah, I wasn't gonna put her timing chain on and put the valve covers back. Yeah. But these are these things that you notice. Do I really have time for that? Maybe I got a few minutes. That thing. And so anything that really challenges self-centeredness, which back to Alyssa's point is we also need to take care of ourselves. So we need to make sure our needs are met. We need to make sure we have our resources available. My teacher, Geshe Gelsen, would always say around donations, make sure your needs are met, then make a donation, right, to the center. Always make that. Make sure your needs are met. Make sure you have what you need, and then offer. But in the perfection of generosity, always give just a little more than you're comfortable. Right? Make sure your needs are met, but just that little bit where a little more time, a little more effort, maybe a little more of a donation or a tip or whatever that is. But the value in having be just a little uncomfortable. That's where we work on our self-centeredness. You're not depriving yourself. It's just that little bit. Because we have so much more than we need, right? I mean, maybe let someone have that last piece of cherry pie. For those of you who don't know, I am passionate about cherry pie. So, have that offering first. So, in this opportunity this week is to notice our opportunities to give, right? But with this motivation and this understanding of the difference it makes in our lives and the lives of others, that we are a part of something, right? We're a part of this community, and it makes a difference if people have their needs met. It makes a difference when we drive, driving. How about letting someone get in front of you? It's okay. Generosity in this sense. And recognizing that we're all engaged in this process of life and everyone's giving life to us and we can contribute. And the more that you do that, you're going to offset the self-centeredness. And you may notice the sticky points of, I really don't want to give 5 minutes. But you got 5 minutes. What's something I can do that makes a difference? Okay, we'll go to Alyssa, and I think we're
Hi,
there.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if this is the right place to ask. And so if this isn't, just let me know. I'm thinking about generosity and boundaries and enabling.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got this one particular situation that comes to mind pretty regularly with this, where I would have the opportunity to give a ton of time to somebody that I don't see her, I see her animals every day. And she's not taking the time to take care of them really at all, besides feeding. And it's not going to their care is not going to happen unless I or somebody else does it. And I haven't been doing it, somebody else has, but could use more help. But when does that become enabling? Because the owner doesn't step up to the plate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's actually a direct question because that's our big struggles is, people give in a way that's unhealthy. And boundaries are an opportunity to give love to others and to self. I mean, that's what they are. A boundary is, instead of enabling an unhealthy behavior, setting a boundary is giving people an opportunity to improve. And it's also an opportunity for you to self-care. So the trick, though, is the wisdom that knows the difference between really giving freely and openly if you have the time to care for, I'm guessing it's horses. Yeah. Care for these horses, give them a little more than their food, and it's about the horses, not about the person. And you have the time, then that's nice. But if the idea is that I'm doing things because I think somebody needs to change, we're already on the wrong track, right? But if I have some time to maybe improve the lives of those being affected, then you got time for it. That's nice to do. But, going back to like an addicted person, right? So that's a world I work in. Enabling someone by giving them money for their substances, that's not loving at all, right? That's not loving. That's enabling an unhealthy addiction that creates all kind of damage in the world. So the loving thing there would be to, I'm not going to loan you money today, when you get sober or you change your life, I'm happy to help you, or I'm happy to help you get into a place, right? And so these are these balances between what's enabling an unhealthy behavior and what's giving in a way that's beneficial. But at the core is always you need to have your needs met. So some people will expend their whole life being of service to others and not take care of their own basic needs. And then we have burnout and we have a lot of difficulties in terms of healthcare field and doctors right now, super high suicide rate. Doctors are one of the highest suicide rates, and they're giving all the time, but they're not taking care of their own needs. And so I remember interviewing Geshe Punso, and we talked about this confusion where you're giving so much that you're not taking care of yourself. You're giving all this compassion. And he said, no, that's stupid compassion. It's kind of blunt. And because it's really not removing suffering, it's creating suffering for yourself and others. And so that's that fine line that we always have to have that bit of wisdom around our own needs and our own self-care. Because think about it this way. How many more people can you help if you have resources, if you have a good life, if you have medical care, if you have resources to help people? So you might have a business that does very well, and you're going to be able to help a lot more people than if you just gave all your money away, and then you couldn't help many people at all, not even yourself, right? So really thinking about in your own lifestyle, creating a sustainable pathway for yourself to engage in your practices, to be able to be of benefit to others. And so balancing that time. So if there is time at the horse stables and you've taken care of your horses, you have a little extra time, take care of these other ones, and you do it out of love and care for the horses, then that's no harm. But if you take on a task that is more time and energy than you have, and you have other commitments, then it's balancing that. But this is where wisdom, really needs to check in with our self-care so that we can be a benefit to others.
Thank
Is that
you.
helpful?
Very, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Assad.
Along the line of boundaries.
Oh, we need you to use the microphone or the people online won't hear you. So pass that. Forgot.
Yeah, so just along the line of boundaries and generosity, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, maybe because being in recovery, I see a lot of it around me, my peers and stuff. I'm finding it hard to figure out when, like, when is it bad to be helpful or unhelpful to be helpful in a sense? And maybe I already sense some like self-centeredness in that thing, like, maybe am I even able to help? But I'm trying to figure out, is there a way to understand or to know when it's too much, or when someone just needs to sit in their grief or their anger or their frustration? And is that desire for me to help or try to help, like, when does that become a bad thing? How do I navigate that? Because I see it a lot, and instinctually I'd like to try to be there for people, but sometimes I see it backfire. And you never want to hurt someone anymore. So is it just sitting with them? Is it leaving them alone? Is it asking them? It's something I'm just battling with recently.
Yeah, thanks. So this is trial and error, right? This is only going to come from experience. And one of the things that is challenging sometimes is when people are suffering, that we're uncomfortable that they're suffering. So I want to help them so I'm not suffering. And sometimes, people just need to feel their feelings, but it never hurts to ask, is there something I can do for you? Would you like me to sit with you or not? The problem is sometimes we think we know their answers. If you do this, yeah, that's not going to be helpful. But rather, one thing that generally is pretty helpful is listening. Listening. And let them, let them know we hear them. Holding space is what we call it. What's going on? Is it, you open to sharing? Can I be there for you? You want to talk? And they may not want to talk, or they may want to talk. But the key is, to not have the answer. And it's a good conversation to help people find their own. Somebody sharing their problem, they're struggling. The most powerful thing that we can get to in a conversation is to, as they describe their problems, their struggles, their suffering, is to hear it, validate it, and then ask them, so what do you think would be a healthy thing to do? What do you think would be a healthy thing to do? And you're going to find mostly they have a good answer if you phrase it that way. Not what should you do? That's a problem question. But yeah, wow, that's a tough situation. What do you think would be a healthy thing to do? And they may have an answer. And yeah, that sounds pretty positive. And just being there in that way is helpful. Yeah, listening and asking questions and letting them find their answer. That's kind of the whole key to therapeutic process. Yeah. All right, Eric.
There's the button. I'll go fast. That same question occurs in larger systems as well. America is famous for, I think, I don't remember if it was 50s, 60s. At some point, there was a famine in India, and we all gathered around and sent a ton of milk to a population that was lactose intolerant and poisoned people who were starving out of our uneducated desire to do good. It made people throw up a lot, even though they were starving. So that curiosity is so beneficial, whether you're acting with an individual or in a giant system. We're also famous for having dropped thousands of laptops off to populations in the desert with barely an electricity or any electricity and no way to repair things. So taking moments for curiosity rather than jumping in with a ton of answers makes a big difference.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, there's a whole lot of in India. I lived in India in the monastery. And you'd see all this old beat up sign due to the donation of so and so in this building that's, dilapidated and stuff, and these good meaning things that had no sustainability or maybe weren't the right answer. So generally now most nonprofits are trained, to go into a situation is to get to know the culture, recognize the culture, see what works for them, ask their questions and discover, instead of our old system of showing them the wonder of our Western technology, having it go to waste like that. Yeah, I think there was a powdered milk thing with that, as I recall that damaging thing. A lot of damage. Yeah, so likewise with people, my answers or solutions may not be very helpful, but allowing people to have their answers is really, really potent medicine. So thanks for pointing that out, Eric. We can take that into our bigger view. All right. Let's take a moment, those who care to dedicate the merit of our time together. A lot of things we could have been doing on a Wednesday. We came here to talk about generosity. And so I mentioned that sort of visualization of, I just think of raindrops of merit into this lake, that ocean of merit, actually, for the benefit of all beings. And that's valuable to you. Use that. Let's just take a moment to recognize the value of our time together, the collective merit that we've cultivated throughout our lives, all the good that we've ever done, the kindness of others. Any merit or wisdom from our time here tonight, let us collectively dedicate this for the benefit of all beings. May our collective merit find its way into the world, nurturing others, eliminating suffering, and cultivating the path of liberation for all. May we also dedicate this merit and wisdom for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may be able to engage in these skillful methods so we can recognize our own primordial wisdom, our own Buddha nature, and be of greatest benefit to all. And with that motivation, those who'd care to can join me in a formal dedication. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha.